On 4th of November 1995, Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated. This was at the conclusion of mass demonstration calling "Say yes to peace and no to violence." At the background was an incitement campaign that lasted for many long months. Since the signing of the Oslo Accords in September 1993, the right in Israel very much opposed giving away any part of Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, to the Palestinian, inflamed the atmosphere filled with incitement. I studied the radical right in Israel since 1985. I wrote my doctorate about Meir Kahane. And I ended my dissertation with a warning and a hope. A warning that the followers of Kahane, once their leader blood was shed, Kahane was assassinated in 1991. That gave legitimacy to shed the blood of the opponents of Meir Kahane. And I hoped that things would not escalate to that degree. However, after September 1993, all obstacles to avert incitement were removed by waves of hatred against Yitzhak Rabin, his government, and whatever this government represents. I've tried to warn people in Israel about what is coming ahead. I saw the incitement, I heard it clearly. I was teaching at Bar-Ilan University. Every day I passed the main square of Bar-Ilan University and I saw the placards of Rabin in Kafia, calling him a traitor, marking him as a target. And I was deeply troubled. Little did I know that at the same campus, just a few buildings away from my building, Yigal Amir was studying. Yigal Amir was the guy who assassinated Yitzhak Rabin on that fateful night on the 4th of November 1995. I called President Ezer Weizmann, whom I knew for many years, and pleaded with him that he, as a president, would raise a voice against incitement in Israel. I contacted the legal advisor to the government and other officials and said that incitement calls for murder and Rabin might be killed. Despite all this reasoning and rationale and studying and learning the radical right in Israel, it is one thing to comprehend in your mind that kind of event and quite another to experience it. It's a blow not only to your mind, it's a blow to your heart. And like the vast majority of Israelis and other people all over the world, I was grieving. I was grieving the loss of a beloved prime minister who wanted to do good to his people and also to the Palestinian people, who stood for peace and justice and reconciliation, values that I hold dear. Few months after the 4th of November, I went to see the president of my university, University of Haifa, Professor Yehuda Chayut. And I suggested to him to organize a conference in memory of Yitzhak Rabin. And Yehuda was open to this idea. He asked me how much money I need. I told him, and he did not argue. He said, "I'm going to give you what you need. Go ahead, I'm giving you my blessing. Start organizing." And I organized an international conference that assembled at the University of Haifa, the main auditorium that was full of people. All the places were taken with dignitaries and missions from all over the world and diplomats from all over the world. We wanted Colin Powell to deliver the keynote speech, but he was not available. So Shimon Peres came and he gave the keynote speech. Leah Rabin, the widow of Yitzhak, and her daughter Talia Rabin arrived as well. It was a very dignified evening in which we pay tribute to Prime Minister Rabin and for the values that he stood for. After the conference, it was a 4-day conference with many speeches and excellent papers. I decided that I'm going to convince some of the papers that have some bearing, that some commonalities that can be fitted together into a collected essays book and publish it. One of my guests at the conference was the president of the University of Michigan at the time, Professor Lee Bollinger. And when he heard that I'm interested to assemble some of the essays into a book, he said, "Why don't you try University of Michigan Press?" And I said, "Fine. It's a respectable publication house, university publication house. I'd be happy to publish with Michigan." So Lee said, "Fine, let me see what I can do." And surprise, surprise, the book was published by University of Michigan Press. It came out in the year 2000. So this is the book, Liberal Democracy and the Limits of Tolerance. And I would like to go with you on some of the essays in honor and memory of Yitzhak Rabin. Mrs. Leah Rabin, after my introduction, opens this volume by speaking about the legacy of Yitzhak Rabin. Frederick Schauer wrote on the cost of communicative tolerance. David Feldman wrote about Protestant tolerance, legal values, and the control of public order policing. Owen Fies on freedom of speech and political violence. My own contribution on boundaries of freedom of expression before and after Prime Minister's Rabin assassination. Wayne Sumner about should hate speech be free speech, John Stuart Mill and the limits of tolerance. Erving Kotler on Holocaust denial, equality and harm, boundaries of liberty and tolerance in a liberal democracy. Richard Moon on the regulation of racist expression. Joe Magnet on freedom of the press and terrorism. Ed Lambeth on pragmatic liberalism and the press in violent times. And a few others. It's a very rich collection, 300 pages of scholarship dedicated to the memory of Yitzhak Rabin. I hope you may find interest. Thank you.